The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. Dry grass whispered secrets in the wind, and an unsettling stillness enveloped the land, making it feel like a forgotten world. As the figures appeared on the horizon, they thought they were walking onto a barren expanse, a place forgotten by time, empty and unclaimed. But the truth was far deeper, darkened by secrets buried beneath the surface. They walked with a casual confidence, the kind that comes from the thrill of adventure. Three friends, lured by tales of a hidden treasure, were convinced that they'd stumbled upon an untouched paradise. The air buzzed with the excitement of possibilities. Laughter echoed in the silence as they shared glances, their eyes glimmering with dreams of riches. But unbeknownst to them, this land was anything but empty. As they ventured deeper, the terrain changed subtly. The ground felt firmer beneath their feet, the once deadened landscape pulsed with an eerie life. One friend, Jake, paused to look at a gnarled tree, its twisted roots snaking through the cracked earth. "Look at this," he said, his voice laced with mock awe. But Sam, the more cautious of the three, felt a chill skitter down his spine. "Maybe we should leave, this place feels." His warning hung in the air, dismissed with a roll of the eyes and the promise of adventure. After all, the thrill of discovery was intoxicating, blinding them to the whispers of the land, urging them to turn back. Every step they mapped out their ambitions, each sentence layering anticipation onto the growing tension. The thrill of finding something hidden overshadowed their instincts. As the sun slipped lower, the shadows grew longer, an ominous sign that went unnoticed. Then they found it, an ancient relic half buried in the dirt. Its surface was engraved with symbols, a language of a people long past. Allegiance to stories more powerful than they could comprehend shivered in the air. Jake exclaimed, his heart racing. But suddenly, profound silence enveloped them. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Fear pierced through their excitement as an unsettling realization settled over them. They were not alone, not truly. Behind the trio, hidden among the trees, eyes watched with an intensity that sent shivers down their spines. The ancient guardians of this land, those who understood its worth, had long been waiting for intruders, for their greed to invite the darkness. Just as they made the decision to leave, shadows shifted. A moment too late, they were caught in the snare of their own curiosity. The rustling began, soft at first and then a crescendo of movement. Panic ignited in their chests. Shouted Sam, his voice thundered through the air. They turned as one and adrenaline kicked in. The previously explored charm of the landscape morphed into a labyrinth of terror. Roots grasped at their feet as the land refused to let them escape, pulling them deeper into its heart. With every frantic stride, they could feel the presence closing in. Whispers surrounded them, taunting and echoing from the shadows. Every thumping heartbeat pulsed in sync with the earth itself. The feeling of being hunted wrapped around them like a noose. Jake stumbled and fell, his palms scratching against the parched earth. He yelled, voice raw with panic. The fear in his eyes turned to desperation. Sam reached back to help him, but in that moment time slowed. Their friendship, forged in bravado, now hung between them like a fragile thread. Jake shouted, his voice a cocktail of fear and defiance. But Sam hesitated, bonding with a loyalty that felt unbreakable even in the face of their terror. It was more than friendship, it was their very survival. With raw strength, Sam pulled Jake up, but as they regained their footing, the shadows surged. Thick, dark figures emerged, emerging slowly, almost with reluctance, their eyes glinting like embers in the dying light. Their forms twisted and molded, the remnants of warriors, guardians of this land, driven by a duty older than anything the friends had ever known. The air crackled, heavy with power and the weight of ancient histories. They darted forward, closing in, but they stayed silent, a silence that held more menace than any roar. The leaders of this land didn't need to speak. Their presence alone told the trio everything they needed to know. They were trespassers in a world that believed in consequences. Sam screamed once more, this time fueled by desperation. They took off, cleaving paths through the previously enchanting landscape, now a nightmare painted in vivid fear. The trio plunged through a thicket of thorns and branches, their clothes ripping and scratching, leaving trails of red against the neglected brown of the world. Heart-pounding, lungs screaming for air, they stumbled towards a clearing, a glimmer of hope. Their eyes darted to the sun setting beneath the horizon, transforming everything into shades of gold and crimson. But the fiery sky blurred as they looked back, and the figures grew closer, relentless like the past they wished to escape. In that moment, clarity washed over Sam. The stories they had heard of treasure had only hinted at curses, at souls claimed by the land that had once promised them riches. Every treasure told of its own guardian, punishment for those too greedy to respect the spirits that still roamed freely. He felt the weight of his own naivety crashing down. They had walked onto the land thinking it was empty, when it was filled with ancient power, the kind that called out to those who disrespected it. They reached the edge of the clearing, breathless and terrified. Ahead, a ravine opened wide, a chasm painted in darkness. The figures drew near, their eyes burning with a fury that demanded to be recognized. With nowhere left to go, the friends exchanged glances, fear clenching their hearts tight. They stood on the precipice of the unknown. Jake's voice cracked, barely a whisper. Sam felt his heart racing, thoughts whirling. was a moment of reckoning, a choice between surrendering to that which they clearly misjudged or confronting the shadows chasing them. We can't just give in. But the certainty in his voice faded as he spoke. It wasn't about fighting, they were outmatched. This land didn't desire a confrontation, it sought understanding. Deeper questions haunted him. Who were the guardians? What had happened to those who had crossed them before? As if sensing his uncertainty, a faint shimmer flickered across the surface of the ravine. Crouching low, they leaned in, hope mingling with disbelief. Their eyes widened as they noticed an intricate formation laid out beneath them, another world hidden in the shadows, a world that had been overlooked because of their obsession. A forgotten civilization, its memories woven into the fabric of the land. This isn't just a treasure, he breathed, it's a warning. The weight of regret crashed upon them like a tidal wave. The figures halted, surrounding the three intruders, their shadows looming as they awaited the decision. Fear still clenched at Sam's throat, but his heart pulsed with a wild hope. Perhaps the anticipation of riches had blinded them to the true wealth the land offered: history, connection, respect. A chance to find common ground instead of betrayal. Let's show them we mean no harm. Sam's voice was steadier now, clenched fists slowly relaxing. Jake and the third friend, Mia, nodded, vulnerability flickering in their eyes. Silently, they stepped back from the ledge, hands raised in reverence. A moment stretched into eternity. The guardian's eyes bore into them, searching for sincerity. The weight in the air shifted as a hum echoed through the clearing, a communication that transcended words. The energy of the ancient land began to weave a tapestry of understanding between them. It was a pact, an acknowledgement of the balance disturbed. One guardian took a step forward, its presence both terrifying and majestic. The landscape beneath trembled slightly, dust swirling into the air. You sought treasure, but it was never lost. It is here within the land that cradles your footsteps. Learn from the stories, understand the past. And just like that, the threat dissipated. The shadows melted back into the depths of the forest, as if they hadn't been there at all, just figments of a lesson learned in a world that could have consumed them. The friends stood, hearts racing in unison. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the land in hues of twilight. A fragile peace settled over them, one forged in the shared understanding of loss and redemption. With every step they took back toward the edge of the realm they had mistakenly believed was empty, they carried with them a newfound respect, a promise to honor rather than exploit. They had been caught, yes, but in that moment of capture, they discovered the land's true treasure, the importance of connection, respect, and the overwhelming weight of history waiting to be honored. The wind whistled through the tall grass, carrying with it the promise of secrets and the thrill of discovery. Four friends, Evelyn, Marco, Lisa, and David, stood at the edge of an expansive field, their hearts racing with excitement. They had read about this place in an old book, a land rumored to be a hidden treasure trove of artifacts from a long-lost civilization. But the truth was far darker than they could imagine. As they stepped onto the land, they felt the initial rush of adrenaline, the intoxicating aroma of adventure filling the air. Little did they know, the empty space around them was alive with echoes of the past stories of those who had come before, and of those who had been lost forever. Lisa's voice trembled as she scanned the horizon, uncertainty knitting its way across her brow. She had always been the cautious one, the one who questioned the wisdom of diving headfirst into unknown waters. Marco shrugged. We're just exploring. It's not like we're doing anything wrong. Evelyn laughed and nudged him. Empty field, look at it. But just beyond the beauty lay an air thick with warnings. As they ventured further into the landscape, the grass began to sway like a sea of ghosts. Every rustle felt like a whisper, a cautionary tale about the perils of greed and disrespect. David, the quietest of the friends, snapped a photo of the vast expanse. We should document this, he said, trying to shake off the unease that danced in his stomach. With each step, they wandered deeper into the heart of the land. Time faded, hours melted away, and the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. But nothing could shake the persistent feeling that they were not alone. They stumbled upon small heaps of stones, remnants of what must have once been homes or burial sites. Marco kicked at one, not realizing the weight of his actions until he heard a low grumble, a sound so near yet so far that it rattled his bones. Lisa asked, eyes wide in fear. Probably just an animal, Marco replied, trying to sound brave, but the unease in his own voice betrayed him. As they continued their exploration, a palpable tension hung in the air, creeping up their spines like a cold draft. It wasn't just the twilight that made the shadows feel alive. Something else lingered, an ancient presence that had no intention of being ignored. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, an eerie sensation that made them halt in their tracks. Evelyn whispered, one hand gripping Marco's arm. Before they could answer, the world shifted. A cacophony of sounds the wind carried turned into distinct voices, low murmurs swelling into a chorus of anguish and warning. Turn back, panic sparked in David's eyes. But as they turned to retreat, a wall of shadows loomed, obscuring their path. Figures emerged from the dusk, wreathed in mist, their eyes reflecting the dying light like embers in a dying fire. The majesty of the land had transformed into an ominous prison, one that would not easily let them go. Voice boomed, echoing off the invisible walls of the approaching darkness. Marco shouted, his bravado evaporating. The figure repeated, its voice like ice. You come seeking treasures, yet you know not the price that comes with them. As fear clawed at their throats, Evelyn stepped forward, emboldened by a mix of defiance and desperation. We mean no harm. The figure's form shifted, ethereal yet terrifying, revealing a face etched in sorrow. The friends stood frozen, bound together by fear and confusion. Marco stumbled backward, the ground beneath him unfamiliar and hostile, as memory crept into the corners of their mind, stories of cultural history and the consequences of disrespecting what belonged to others. Evelyn, still flickering with courage, spoke again. We didn't know, we just found this place. We thought it was empty, the figure interrupted, its voice deepening, an empty vessel to fill with your thirst for adventure. You've seen nothing here that would tell you of the lives we lived, the love we cherished, and the pain we endured. It was then that David, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. What if we want to learn? Touched the figure's eyes. The shadows around them shifted, growing restless. Lisa clutched David's arm, fear bubbling in her throat. We can go back. We promise we'll tell others to respect this place. But the ethereal figure shook its head. Words without truth are mere breezes, blowing away the wisdom of our ancestors. Show us your intentions. Every heartbeat felt monumental as they wrestled with their fate. A choice laid in front of them: escape through denial or engage in the stark reality of what they had stumbled upon. Evelyn gathered her courage, sensing that this was a pivotal moment. The shadows parted slightly as the figure stepped closer, revealing an expansive landscape scattered with the remnants of ancient lives. Kneel, understand the weight of what you seek. History is not just buried beneath the surface, it lives in the essence of the air you breathe. Sinking down to their knees, a strange mixture of fear and reverence enveloped them. As their palms pressed against the ground, they could feel the pulse of life beneath them, stories etched in roots and soil, lives intertwined with every breath of wind. This wasn't merely an empty expanse, but a rich tapestry of existence, yearning to be remembered. Closed eyes began to see imprints of laughter, whispers of sorrow, the very essence of humanity woven into the landscape. Visions cascaded like shimmering water over their hearts, filling them with weight and beauty, pain and love. Memories danced like shadows before them, and for the first time they understood. This wasn't the thrill of treasure, it was a calling to bear witness to the lives that had been lost, to cherish the love that had been buried. They weren't just trespassers, they were part of a larger narrative. As the weight of realization settled in, the shadowy figures drew near, their forms flickering with flickers of light. You feel it now, do you not? You are part of this land, and its tales are woven in your being. Evelyn opened her eyes, tears mingling with gratitude and regret. We might have come seeking treasure, but now we see what true wealth lies here. The air vibrated with a different energy, and the figures shifted, sadness lingering in their presence. Then you may leave, but know this, each journey comes with a debt. You carry these stories, now honor them. The shadows began to dissolve like mist before the sun, descending back into the earth, their forms melding with the land once more. The friends rose, hearts heavy yet lighter, as if a shroud had lifted from their souls. As they turned to leave, the landscape no longer felt foreboding. The field hummed softly with life, an ancient song welcoming them into the fold of history. They walked back toward the horizon, no longer blind to the beauty of the past, no longer driven by greed. They stepped lightly, carrying the weight of their journey, the lessons etched into their hearts. From that day onward, they would return to share the stories of the land, to honor the lives interwoven within its sprawling fields. They had walked onto the land thinking it was empty, but in the end, it was they who had been filled with understanding, respect, and an unwavering connection to those who had once called it home. Silence reigned in the twilight as the sun dipped low, scattering golden rays over a sprawling field that seemed to stretch forever. It looked like a vast, empty canvas, waiting for wanderers to leave their mark. Four friends, Jess, Marco, Lily, and Ben, stood at the threshold of this untouched land, their hearts racing with excitement and the thrill of adventure. Little did they know this place wasn't just empty, it was a resting ground steeped in the weight of unseen histories. Marco exclaimed, grinning widely. His enthusiasm was infectious. There's no one around to stop us, Jess added, eyes sparkling with mischief. Let's head it. Lily looked around nervously, pulling her sweater close. Are you sure this is a good idea? It feels eerie, Marco replied, unfazed. They say that legends often lie in places like this. He led the charge, stepping foot on the unmarked land with a confidence that skirted the edge of arrogance. Ben followed, glancing back hesitantly at Lily. It'll be fine. As they walked, the grass swayed gently, almost beckoning them deeper into the field. They ventured forward, each step echoing in their hearts as the shadows grew longer. The excitement prickled their skin, but an undercurrent of unease threaded through the air. Every so often, a whispering wind threw chills up their spines, though they shrugged it off as mere nerves. Time began to lose all meaning as they roamed. Hours passed, and just as they thought they were alone in this expanse, they stumbled upon a peculiar formation of stones, arranged in a meticulous pattern. The rocks glistened with an otherworldly sheen, and the air around them felt thick with history. Ben called out, kneeling to brush away the dirt. They gathered around the stones, curiosity racing ahead of caution. Jess reached out to touch one of the stones, but as her hand made contact, a sudden rush of wind roared through the clearing. The sky, once a soft hue of purples and pinks, darkened ominously. Lily gasped, stepping backward instinctively. The thrill of discovery was swiftly replaced by something more sinister. Probably just the weather changing, Marco said, trying to appear brave as uncertainty crept in. But as they moved away from the altar, the atmosphere shifted, thickening like molasses, wrapping around them with unseen hands. The ground seemed to pulse beneath their feet, as if the very earth was aware of their presence. "I think we should go back," Lily insisted, her voice quaking. This place, before anyone could respond, a low rumble echoed through the air, a sound that vibrated deep in their chests like the growl of an unseen beast. The friends exchanged worried glances as apprehension settled among them like a storm cloud. "Maybe it's just an animal," Ben suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. The heaviness around them pressed harder, squeezing the air from their lungs. They started to move, quickening their pace, but behind them came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and closer than they'd ever anticipated. The four friends glanced back, their history together suddenly overshadowed by fear. From beyond the stones emerged shapes, shadows, cloaked figures that flickered in the waning light, gliding toward them with an urgency that sent an electric shock of panic coursing through their veins. Marco breathed, eyes wide with terror. Jess shouted, turning on her heel, her instincts kicking in. They began to sprint, adrenaline surging as the footsteps followed. The soft grass that once felt inviting now felt like shackles, threatening to anchor them to the very ground they'd disrespected. Ben yelled, despair creeping into his voice as they darted past the altar and into the heart of the field. "Just keep going," Marco urged, but the shadows were closing in, weaving through the grass like smoke chasing a flame. The air grew cold, biting at their skin, dragging each breath from their lungs. Lily tripped, her cries echoing in the stillness. Without a second thought, Ben skidded to a halt, racing back to pull her up. Their hands gripped tightly together, but as they attempted to run again, the shadows flared, drawing nearer, their gazes sharp and unyielding. Jess shouted, panic washing over her as she felt the weight of their desperate situation. But Ben refused to abandon Lily. "I can't." Instead of retreating, he pulled her to her feet. The bond they shared felt stronger than fear itself. As they stumbled forward, the silhouettes lurked, their forms flickering like flames. The energy around them surged, longing to ensnare the friends. The figures were guardians of this land, protectors of the secrets it held. They had seen too many before, heads filled with greed and selfishness, and they would not allow this intruding group to walk away unscathed. "You come seeking treasure," one of the figures growled, its voice layered with centuries of sorrow. "But what you disturb is not yours to take." Their muscles tightened, every instinct screaming at them to run, but their feet felt rooted to the earth as if it held a gravitational pull unique to this land. The transformation from reckless explorers to terrified captives was rapid, and fear coursed through their veins. Marco shouted, his brave facade crumbling. The darkness twisted around them, and the figures loomed closer, their faces becoming clear, made of shadows, but somehow human too. "Learning comes with consequences," the leading figure declared, its voice echoing like a thunderclap. Jess cried out, desperation spilling from her heart. "We'll honor this land. You cannot speak of a history you do not understand. You have come here thinking this land was empty, but in reality it is teeming with life, the lives of those who once walked here," the figure replied, and the ground seemed to tremble with those words. As their hearts raced, Lily spoke up, surprising herself with her courage. "We never wanted to disturb anything, but treasure is not always gold or jewels," the figure continued, eyes glinting like stars in the night sky. "True treasure lies in respect, understanding, and the memories of those before you." The friends glanced at one another, realization dawning like a soft light through darkness. They were not explorers in search of riches, they were witnesses invited to address their misconceptions. Each of them knew deep down that they had been foolish, blinded by the allure of discovery, unaware of the weight they carried. "Teach us," Marco said, voice trembling. Gradually, the shadows shifted, their forms swirling with an ethereal glow. They seemed to sigh, their presence blending with the wind, coaxing the friends to kneel and bear witness. Listen to the stories of the land. Hesitantly, the friends sank to their knees in the soft earth, feeling the pulse of life beneath them. The shadows gathered, forming vibrant images that danced before their eyes, visions of the families who once thrived, the rites and rituals they celebrated, the love that intertwined their lives with the landscape. They saw laughter and sorrow, heroism and loss played out like a timeless film in front of them. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she grasped the depth of their missteps. They were no longer lost in a field, they were in the heart of a legacy, and their actions had threatened to sever the connection to those who had come before. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, vulnerability pouring from her heart. A palpable silence enveloped them as they absorbed the weight of the moment. The figures watched, their gazes softening as the friends embraced the history surrounding them. Each heartbeat echoed understanding, each breath pulling in the wisdom the land offered. Now you carry the stories with you, the lead figure said, its voice dancing on the wind, kinder now as if forgiving them. You hold the truth of this land's memories in your very bones. As they slowly rose from their knees, the air shifted once more. The shadows began to fade, retreating back into the earth, leaving behind an indescribable sense of connection to the land that had nearly claimed them. Relief washed over the friends, intertwining with remorse, but more than that, it was the exhilaration of new understanding. Outside pressures no longer mattered. They were no longer just friends, but stewards of stories past. Together, they would carry the legacy forward, tales woven into the fabric of their lives. When they finally left the field behind, the sky glinted like diamonds as the stars twinkled above. Echoes of their laughter mingled with whispers of the land, a gentle reminder of the lessons learned. What had once felt empty had become a profound treasure. History flowed from their souls as they walked away, every step now resonating with purpose and respect, an unbroken bond to those who had come before. They had entered thinking the land was vacant, but it had filled them with something eternal, a commitment to honor the stories of those who had given the land life, a promise to cherish what was sacred. In the end, they walked onto the land thinking it was empty, only to discover the most valuable lesson. The richest treasures lie not in gold or jewels, but in the stories that connect us all, echoing through time for those willing to listen. In the quiet brilliance of that twilight, they felt never truly alone again. A thick fog hung low over the landscape, suffocating the light. The air was thick, almost electric, sending shivers through the backs of four friends. They had heard rumors about this place, an expansive piece of land that was supposedly untouched, filled only with the whispers of those who had come and gone. As they stepped over the threshold, everything shifted. It felt more like entering another realm than simply walking onto a plot of earth. Marcus exclaimed, his voice bouncing off the trees that loomed like ancient sentinels. They stood still, absorbing the emptiness around them. Alina, the cautious one of the group, scratched her head. It feels off. A quick gust of wind tousled her hair, and she shivered despite the warmth of the day. Just relax, Alina. This is our chance. We could find something incredible. No one has been here for ages, said Jake, his eyes alight with the thrill of exploration. Besides, it's just an empty field. Unbeknownst to them, they were not the first intruders to tread upon this land. Long before their reckless excitement, there were tales of those who had sought treasure, only to vanish without a trace. Little did they know that their laughter echoed where joy once thrived. As they moved deeper, the landscape shifted beneath their feet. In the stillness, a low hum filled the air, barely perceptible at first, but gradually building until it became a symphony of voices. Turn back, it pleaded softly like a haunted lullaby. Marcus asked, eyebrows furrowed. Alina's anxiety flared. This is exactly what I was talking about, but her warning was drowned out by Jake's eagerness. Come on, just a little further. It's probably just the wind, he said, dismissing her concerns. With that, they marched onward, unaware of the eyes that watched them from the darkness. Moments later, they stumbled upon a dilapidated hut half hidden by creeping ivy. It emanated an air of neglect, yet something about it pulled them closer. This must be it, Marcus whispered with breathless excitement. Jake approached the door, pushing it softly, revealing a room shrouded in shadows and dust. Old furniture lay scattered, and remnants of lives long forgotten clung to the walls. Faded photographs, cracked mirrors, and trinkets of the past. The excitement surged. As they scavenged through the remains, what should have been a fun exploration turned chilling. Each creak of the floorboards echoed a warning. Each whisper of wind seemed to carry a message. And yet they were too enraptured by their discovery to heed the signs. Suddenly, Alina let out a sharp gasp. Guys, she held up an ornate box, its surface glinting in the fading light. Intricate carvings decorated its exterior, and it felt inexplicably heavy in her hands. Jake encouraged, leaning forward, his eyes alight with anticipation. With a quick twist, the lid popped open, and a rush of cold air expelled from within. Inside lay a collection of old coins, tarnished and battered, but undeniably valuable. Yet as they leaned closer, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The once lively chatter of the wind turned ominous, as if the very trees were warning them. We should go, Alina urged once more, but her words fell on deaf ears. The thrill of discovery clouded their judgment, and the draw of the past tangled them tighter. I think we've found something big, Marcus said, brushing back the hair from his face. Let's just take a few more things. We must. Before he could finish, the door slammed shut, reverberating with a thunderous crack. Panic seized their hearts. They rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. Jake shouted, pulling the handle frantically. Alina pointed at the window. Shadows flickered outside, moving with an urgency that sent chills down their spines. Outside, dark shapes began to materialize, figures cloaked in a mist that seemed to pulse around them. They moved with an elegance that belied their fearsome nature, stepping lightly as if gliding above the ground. One voice thundered, its tone echoing with ancient authority. The friends exchanged horrified glances, desperation mingling with disbelief. Marcus yelled, but the words felt inadequate against the gravity of the moment. Jake's voice trembled, his bravado stripped away. The approaching forms fell silent, their presence filling the air with a palpable tension. You seek treasures, believing this land is vacant, but you are mistaken. Alina cried out, pulling at Marcus' arm. "We didn't come to steal anything. You entered without respect, forgetting those who came before you. Now you must face the consequences," the figure growled, its eyes burning with otherworldly light. The pressure mounted, and the friends felt the weight of their choices collapsing upon them. They had entered into a dance with the unknown, disrupting the delicate balance of long-forgotten lives. Marcus pleaded, his heart racing. "We'll leave," but the ground began a tremor beneath them as the shadows swirled into a whirlwind, blocking every possible escape. The echoes of laughter turned to cries for help, haunting them from the corners of the room. Fear seeped into their veins, paralyzing them in their tracks. "You will not leave this place unchanged. You must pay the toll of ignorance," the figure intoned, its form drifting closer. In that instant, time seemed to stretch around them. Memories of their lives flashed before their eyes, their hopes, dreams, and the naive excitement that had led them here. They were not adventurers, they were trespassers. The voice echoed, "Feel our pain." Suddenly, the world around them transformed. Colors muted, shadows deepened, and the oppressive atmosphere morphed into a haunting vision. They stood amidst a vibrant community bustling with life. Laughter bounced off the walls of homes, the joy of celebrations enveloping them. This was what the land once held, memories bubbling with color and vibrancy, but it was fleeting. "I don't want to be here," Glenn whispered, terror flickering in his eyes. Alina shouted back, tears streaming down her face. They were not merely observing, they felt the emotions of the past coursing through them, the heart-wrenching love of families, the joy of children playing, the anguish of loss, a whirlwind of memories that tore at their very souls. It was overwhelming. As quickly as the world had transformed, it fell away, replaced once more by the shadows surrounding them. The figures remained, a chorus of voices ringing in their ears. "Do you understand now? Every step you take wears down the threads of connection." Silence hung heavy in the air as the friends absorbed the gravity of their situation. Like a wave, realization washed over them. This wasn't merely about escaping or even the treasure they had once sought. This was about recognition, understanding that they were part of a larger tapestry woven through time, a legacy meant to be honored. "I'll never forget," Marcus said, stepping forward, his voice steadier now. The shadows seemed to ripple, softening ever so slightly. "You carry our legacy now." In that moment, an understanding passed between them, a pact sealed in something greater than themselves. They weren't just there to listen, they had become part of the very fabric of the land. "There must be a way to honor you to make this right," Alina pleaded, her heart aching with the enormity of the task ahead. "Speak our truths, share our memories, ensure this never happens again," the figure replied, its tone gentler now. The door behind them creaked open, the shadows subsiding into the earth, still watching, still guarding. The friends stood in the doorway, hearts still racing but filled with purpose. As they walked back through the once ominous landscape, it shifted around them, revealing the beauty that had always been there but hidden beneath their greed. The hum of life surrounded them, and they were no longer afraid. They were determined to celebrate the past, not just as a memory, but as a living legacy. When they finally exited the land, twilight fell gently around them, wrapping them in warmth. They were no longer merely friends, they had become storytellers, warriors for the truth, carrying the weight of history into the world beyond. Days turned into weeks, and as they shared their experiences, the weight of their responsibility became a part of their lives. They honored the land by educating others, weaving tales that would resonate through the hearts of those who heard. In the end, they walked onto the land thinking it was empty, only to discover it overflowing with life and truth. They had been caught, yes, but their capture brought enlightenment. And in that truth lay the light to recover the past, a mission to tell the stories that would forever echo in the tapestry of time. Each breath they took became an acknowledgement of the lives they now carried with them, ensuring they were never forgotten again. A dense fog enveloped the landscape, cloaking everything in a soft gray shroud. Four friends trudged through the thick mist, unaware of the weight of the land beneath their feet. They stood on the edge of something ancient, but their excitement drowned out any instinct telling them to be cautious. Sam, the most adventurous of the group, peered ahead with bright eyes. "I can't believe we finally made it." Sarah shivered against the chill in the air. "Empty maybe, but that doesn't mean it's safe. It feels strange here." "Come on," Jake chimed in, brushing off her fears. "The stories we heard said this was unclaimed ground. Just think of the treasures lying in wait. No one's had the guts to explore it for years." With that rousing declaration, the group pressed forward, leaving the edge of the tree line and venturing into the open field. The ground was uneven, patches of tall grass and wildflowers springing up in defiance of the sprawling emptiness. Each step seemed to echo back to them, almost as if the land was sending back distorted reflections of their eagerness, warning them in its own quiet way. As they moved deeper into the fog, an old cabin came into view, dilapidated and half-hidden by overgrown vines. Intrigued, Sam waved the others over. "Look," the four friends approached, their hearts racing with the thrill of discovery, unaware of the whispers that rose and fell on the wind, swirling through the fog like lost souls. Sarah hesitated at the door, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "Are we sure about this?" "Exactly," Jake exclaimed, pushing gently against the door, which creaked open with a haunting groan. Sunlight barely broke through the grime-coated windows, slicing through the shadows and revealing a glimpse of what lay within. Inside, the floorboards creaked with every step, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. It felt as if time had stopped years ago, paused in a moment that had once pulsed with life. An old table sat in the center of the room, cluttered with broken trinkets and long-forgotten letters yellowed with age. "Check this out," Sam said, picking up a fading photograph. "Looks like someone used to live here." Excitement buzzed in the air as they rummaged through the remnants of those before them, each finding something that transcended mere objects. Alina dusted off a chipped ceramic mug, holding it as if it could unlock the secrets of the past. But as they explored, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature dropped, and the sounds of the outside world faded into an unsettling silence, as if the field itself was holding its breath. A deep sense of foreboding lingered, wrapping around them like tendrils of mist. Suddenly, Sarah felt a rush of fear. "Guys, we shouldn't be here. It's like, just stop it with the spooky stuff, Sarah." Sam shot back, his tone more dismissive than he realized. But even as he spoke, an undeniable tension filled the room. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, and every creak of the floor seemed amplified, echoing with a sense of danger. Ignoring the nagging feeling clawing at their insides, they continued their search. Then Alina discovered something that made her heart race. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a small, ornate box. She pulled it out, its intricate carvings glistening even in the dim light. Jake asked, curiosity peeking as her fingers trembled while she lifted the lid. Inside were old coins, tarnished but undeniably valuable. Sam exclaimed, his excitement outweighing the unease that had settled over them. "This is proof," but as they marveled at their find, an instinctive shiver raced down Sarah's spine. Just behind them, shadows began to deepen, swirling with a malevolent energy that sank into the very marrow of their bones. "We need to leave." She insisted, but her words were lost to the thrill of discovery. Sam replied, stuffing coins into his pocket. But as he turned back to admire their prize, the room seemed to pulse with an ominous energy. The air thickened, and the door slammed shut with force, rattling the very walls. Panic gripped them. Jake yelled, grasping the door handle and pulling. It wouldn't budge. "Guys, this isn't funny," Alina shouted, her voice rising in pitch, fear creeping into her words. In the flickering shadows, dark shapes began to form, creeping closer with a sense of purpose. "No," Sam protested, urging them to find another way out, but hope began to drain away as they swung around to confront the gathering shadows. The air crackled, heavy with the remnants of unspeakable tale stories that had clung to the land for centuries. A voice boomed, resonating through the cabin like a thunderclap. Sarah stuttered, anxiety flooding her voice. The voice mocked, "You knew nothing of the lives that once thrived here. You come seeking riches, treating this land like a marketplace." The friends huddled together, fear coursing through them like a wildfire. The shadows swirled, taking on forms that echoed the anger and sorrow of those forced into eternal slumber. Each figure was bathed in an ethereal glow, revealing faces etched with pain, roaming not just the cabin but the very earth beneath their feet. "Please." Jake begged, desperation finally cracking his bravado. "The land remembers," the voice intoned, quieter now, filled with sorrow. "Each of you carries our past in your hearts, whether you acknowledge it or not." A rush of vision flooded their minds, memories of laughter, loss, and love entwined with moments of agony and regret. They saw families who had once lived, ancestors who had soared, and souls who had wept. Suddenly, they weren't just voyeurs into the past, they were part of it, feeling the weight of every unacknowledged moment. Alina cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We didn't come to honor you." The figures paused, and a stillness filled the air, heavy and expectant. To understand is to acknowledge. In that moment, Sarah felt the cold tendrils of fear give way to empathy, a fire igniting in her heart. "We promise to tell your stories." The room shuddered as the voices rose again, both mournful and resolute. "You must speak our truths. You must learn to respect the land and its legacies." With those words carried into the depths of their hearts, the friends knelt on the ground, gathering their courage like armor. They made a silent pact, a promise that reached into the very roots of their being. "We will share your stories," Sam vowed, breathless. The shadows began to recede, their anger dissipating like smoke in the wind. With each passing moment, the heavy atmosphere lightened, replaced with a flicker of hope, yet the friends knew they couldn't rush this transformation. The longing for connection to the past would never fade. With a final rush of warmth enveloping them, the figures began to fade, their whispers weaving through the air like leaves in a gentle breeze. "Remember us well," one voice echoed, softer now, filled with an ancient wisdom. As the last remnant slipped away, the door creaked open slowly, revealing the field now bathed in soft light. The laughter of the land returned, mingling with the rustling leaves and birdsong. They stepped outside, trembling, forever changed. No longer did it feel like an empty wilderness. They stood upon sacred ground, teeming with life and its stories. Stripped of their arrogance, they now carried a wealth that no treasure could match, an understanding of the past and its rightful place in the present. In the weeks that followed, the friends transformed their experience into advocacy, sharing the stories they had learned. Schools began inviting them to speak, and community events emerged around honoring the land. They sought to mend the threads connecting the past to the present, ensuring no one would ever tread through life blindly again. Each time they spoke, the echoes of uncertainty faded, replaced by the stories of those whom the earth had once cradled. In sharing, they began to heal, each tale in homage, each breath a reminder of the responsibility they now held. They had walked onto the land thinking it was empty, but they learned that everything has a voice if only one takes the time to hear it. They got caught in the web of the past, but in their entrapment, they discovered a profound truth. The past is never truly gone, and the stories of those who came before will always find a way to resurface, waiting to be honored, waiting to be heard. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the expansive fields that stretched beyond the horizon. Four friends stood at the edge of a massive plot of land, their hearts pounding with excitement and adventure. They had heard the stories myths about a forgotten place, a land untouched by time. But as they took those first hesitant steps into what they believed was empty space, they had no idea how wrong they were. Jake asked with a grin, kicking up a small cloud of dust as he moved forward. Sarah replied, casting a quick look over her shoulder. The trees beyond the fields were dense and dark, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "Come on, it's just wide open land," Marcus said, his enthusiasm bubbling over. "Think of the treasures we might find." As they ventured deeper into the field, the mood shifted. The air felt thick, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand up. Miranda, always the more sensitive one, whispered, "It feels different." "Nothing is watching us," Jake assured her, though doubt crept into his mind. He pushed it aside in favor of dreams of buried artifacts and lost histories. The grass was taller than they expected, brushing against their legs as they walked, a whisper that seemed to echo. Then they stumbled upon a clearing overgrown with wildflowers, a stark contrast to the darkness creeping just beyond. In the center of this clearing was a large rock formation, ancient and majestic, as if it had been standing guard for centuries. Marcus exclaimed, running up to the stones, his excitement bubbling over. As they explored the rocks, they noticed strange carvings etched into the surface symbols that looked like a forgotten language. Jake touched one, and the moment his fingers made contact, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, scattering the petals of the wildflowers. "This is unreal," he murmured, feeling a chill race down his spine. Was it just a breeze, or was there something more? "Guys, maybe we should head back," Sarah suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "This place feels." "Now we have to investigate," Marcus replied, already moving to the next stone. As the shadows lengthened, the sun dipped lower, casting an eerie glow over their surroundings. It felt like they had stepped into another world, one filled with whispers of the past that, if listened to closely, could tell tales of ancient civilizations long forgotten. But as they stood there, the atmosphere thickened. The air grew heavy, pregnant with tension. Miranda shivered, her instincts screaming that they should leave. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. Jake shouted, panic rising in his voice. The shadows flickered around them, and from behind the stones emerged figures cloaked in mist, ancient guardians of the land, their eyes glowing with an ethereal light. The friends froze in place, their hearts racing. One figure boomed, its voice echoing like thunder against the rocks. Fear gripped them as the reality of their situation crashed down like a wave. They were not alone, the legends were true. Miranda yelled, her voice trembling but resolute. The figure responded, its tone dripping with disdain. "Come seeking what you do not comprehend. This land is not empty. It is alive with the memories of those who came before you." Jake glanced at his friends, fear mingling with regret. "We didn't know." The figures moved closer, their forms shimmering like flames in the fading light. "Every stone holds a story. Every path you walk carries the weight of those who walked it before." The truth of those words sunk in like a lead weight, dragging them down into a well of despair as panic began to bubble over. Marcus shouted, stepping back, but the guardians didn't budge. The shadows were closing in, and the mood turned electric, charged with energy that felt almost alive. "Your ignorance carries a price," another figure declared, its voice thundering through the air. Suddenly, the landscape shifted, and they found themselves engulfed in visions, flashes of lives that had once filled this land. They saw families gathered around fires, children laughing, lovers meeting beneath the stars. It was a celebration of life, so vibrant it felt tangible. But then it morphed, shifting into images of suffering, rushes of pain, laughter replaced by tears. The friends stumbled back, overwhelmed, as they each felt the stories gripping their hearts like iron chains. "If you wish to leave, you must carry the weight of our memories, speak our truths, share our pain," one guardian said, its voice now softer but bearing the weight of 1,000 years. Jake stepped forward, suddenly resolute. "We'll honor you. We'll tell the stories of this land. Words alone are not enough," the shadow replied, flickering like a candle flame. "You must commit to understanding, you must bear witness." Fear twisted into determination as they knelt in the grass, their knees pressed against the earth that pulsed beneath them. "We promise," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as she felt the weight of their promise sink deep into the soil. "We will share your stories." The shadows began to pull back slightly, and they felt a rush of warmth envelop them like a blanket. "Do not take this lightly," the figure warned. "Your journey has only begun." With that, the world shifted again. They found themselves back in the clearing, the guardians nowhere to be seen, the air lighter than before. The sun had almost set, and a sense of calm settled over them, mingling with the adrenaline that still coursed through their veins. Marcus asked, breathless as they exchanged glances. It felt so real, Miranda replied, her voice steadied by newfound purpose. I can't believe we almost lost everything, Jake added, shaking his head. With the shadows receding into memory, they gathered together in their small circle, still feeling the unbreakable bond they now shared. We can't leave without documenting this, Sarah insisted. And so they shared their promise, their stories, they collected artifacts, each item now filled with significance and meaning. It was no longer just a journey of exploration. It transformed into a mission, one rooted in respect, history, and an understanding of their place in a story larger than themselves. As they huddled together, night fell around them. Stars scattered across the expanse of the sky like glittering jewels, each one a reminder of the lives lived and lost. While they might have walked onto the land thinking it was empty, they now understood it was a realm bursting with the echoes of countless souls. In the following weeks and months, they devoted themselves to honoring the past, sharing the stories of the land, and teaching others about the weight of history. Schools invited them to share their tale, and community gatherings erupted around the idea of respect for the land they lived on. They organized events to raise awareness about the preservation of historical places, ensuring that no one would ever take them for granted again. They returned to the site often, feeling drawn to it, a place that had once threatened them but had ultimately awakened something powerful within them. Standing there, they would tell the tales discovered through whispers in the wind, stories spoken through the grass, teaching others that there is no such thing as an empty space. Every corner of the earth is filled with memories just waiting to be acknowledged. Through commitment and passion, they learned the true depth of the history they carried, no longer just friends exploring, but guardians of memory, witnesses who understood the weight of every decision they made. In the end, they walked onto the land thinking it was empty, but they emerged with a treasure far beyond anything they had ever imagined, an unbreakable connection to the past, a promise to honor it, and the power to make sure it would never fade away again. Each step back home felt lighter as they walked, their hearts now brimming with purpose, ready to embrace the stories yet to be told. Sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the vast expanse of land that seemed to stretch endlessly before them. The field, bathed in the warm hues of dusk, looked desolate, an untouched relic of a forgotten time. It whispered of secrets and adventures, beckoning the four friends to step deeper into its embrace. There's gotta be something out here, Ryan declared, his voice bubbling with excitement. Jenna, squinting at the horizon, replied hesitantly, but what if it's just nothing? Mark interjected, waving his hands dismissively. It's not nothing. With that, he took the lead, striding forward into the heart of the field. The others followed, though Jenna lingered back just a little, unease creeping up her spine as the trees bordering the edge of the land seemed to whisper their own warnings. As they went deeper, the grass grew taller, brushing against their legs like fingers reaching for them. The air felt heavier, as if every step stirred the whispers of the past. It was exhilarating, yet something gnawed at Jenna, an instinct whispering to her that they weren't as alone as they thought. Ryan called back, glancing over his shoulder. Just something about this place feels off, she admitted, trying to shake the feeling. But her words fell flat against the enthusiasm surrounding her. Mark charged ahead, oblivious. He shouted, pointing to an old stone marker jutting out from the earth, covered in vines and dirt. The carving was faded, but it hinted at something ancient and important. Curiosity piqued, they gathered around the stone. The air grew thicker still, as if drawn by some unseen force, making it hard to breathe. Jenna knelt down, brushing away the dirt, revealing intricate carvings swirling along the side of the stone. These look like glyphs or something, she mused, her heart racing. Suddenly, the ground trembled slightly beneath them, and a low rumble echoed in the air, sending shivers down their spines. Ryan stepped back, eyes wide. What was that? Probably just an earthquake or something, Mark laughed nervously, but Jenna sensed that this wasn't normal. She suggested again, but it was too late. That urge to leave, mingled with the thrill of discovery, had lured them deeper. As twilight descended, casting eerie shadows, they looked for a way to keep their adventure alive. Let's just go a little further. There might be more, Mark insisted, confidence replacing the early excitement of uncertainty. They all agreed, each feeling the swell of adrenaline as they moved forward. But as they walked, the atmosphere shifted once again. The air turned frigid, and a palpable stillness draped itself over the landscape. The whispering breeze transformed into a haunting melody, swirling around them like forgotten echoes from another time. Okay, this isn't cool, Ryan said, glancing around nervously. Just a few more minutes, Mark pressed, pushing forward, driven by ambition. Suddenly, Jenna stopped, eyes widening as she caught sight of shadows flitting through the trees, shapes darting just out of view. Heart racing, she whispered, "Do you see that? Stop it, you're just trying to freak us out," Mark scoffed, though even he couldn't shake the feeling brewing in the pit of his stomach. The shadows cast their own doubts. Nervous laughter broke the tension until the sound of footsteps crunched demandingly through the underbrush. Time froze, and they turned simultaneously toward the sound, their breath hitching in their throats. Shadows began to emerge from the dark, figures draped in cloaks, faces hidden from view. Jenna gasped. A booming voice echoed through the clearing. The ground vibrated, a low hum pulsing beneath them, sending waves of fear coursing through their bodies. Ryan stepped forward, trying to mask his trembling. "We mean no harm," the figure thundered, its voice filled with ancient authority. "They say this place is empty," Mark stammered. "We thought it was just." The figure sneered, stepping closer. As it approached, the grim cloak swirling with shadows, the friends sensed the weight of history clinging to the figure. The friends stood frozen, their minds racing. They had come to discover, to claim something lost, but instead found themselves ensnared in a web of shadows that felt more alive than ever. "Please, we really didn't know," Ryan managed, now shaking with fear. "We'll leave. Your promises mean nothing," the figure hissed. "What you seek comes with consequences." As he spoke, the shadows shifted, forming into images of lives once lived on the very ground where they stood. Enveloping the friends in a whirlwind of emotions, they felt the stories of love, fright, betrayal, and sorrow ripple through them, an echo of pain from the past carrying its weight on their shoulders. Jenna clutched her head, overwhelmed by visions of families gathered around fires, children laughing, and then the darkness seeping in, the loss, the sorrow, the cries of anguish filling the air around them. "We didn't come to steal anything," she sobbed, pleading. "You seek treasures," the figure repeated, shadows swirling around its form. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. They hadn't just stumbled upon a field, they had entered a sanctuary of memories, a place where the past existed alongside them. They were unwitting intruders in a world they had thought was empty. "Learn our stories or remain lost with us forever," the figure warned, the weight of history pressing upon them. Mark exclaimed, suddenly defiant, fear turning to determination. "We'll honor you," but the figure was unmoved, its presence now cold and menacing. Words without understanding are meaningless. In that moment, a brilliant light engulfed them. They felt their bodies being pulled. Every fiber of their beings cried out in agony as visions rushed through them with tidal waves of color and sound. They saw the lands past a kaleidoscope of memories flooding their minds, overwhelming them with a torrent of emotion. Instantly transported, they witnessed the final moments of a family torn apart, echoes of laughter swallowed by dark, unspeakable horrors. They were there in ancient times, feeling the triumph of victories and the despair of losses. Every joy felt raw, every sorrow carved deep into their souls. Ryan screamed, trying to shield his eyes from the heart-wrenching displays of sorrow and despair, but the images kept crashing over them like relentless waves. Their hearts pounded in their chests, every beat a reminder of the truth they had ignored. They settled into a shared understanding rooted deep in the earth itself, pain, love, hope, all woven together like strands of a great tapestry. Finally, they stood before the figures once more, shaken but resolute. "We will carry your stories with us," Jenna promised, her voice steady. The figure asked, its voice now rich with expectation. They all cried out in unison. As the shadows began to swirl again, something shifted in the air. The oppressive weight that had pressed upon them receded, the tension loosening slightly. Yet they felt a lingering connection, a bond forged in shared understanding. The figures retreated, fading into the darkness, but not before one last message rang through the clearing. "We will hold you to your promise." With that, the friends were enveloped in light, and a gentle warmth enveloped them. They found themselves back at the stone formation, the landscape now eerily quiet, stripped of the previous intensity. The sun had almost set, casting golden rays across their faces. Ryan whispered, breathless, his mind racing. "It felt real," Jenna said, her heart still racing. As they exchanged a glance, the shadows from the trees caught their attention once more. They began to shift and twist, not retreating into darkness as before, but gathering strength, blooming into ethereal forms. Mark exclaimed, panic creeping into his voice. "I think," Ryan shouted, stepping back instinctively. But as they turned to flee, a chilling realization struck. There was nowhere to run. The land had caught them, entwined them in its secrets, and its memories would not let them go so easily. A thick mist emerged, swirling around them like a smothering blanket. The friends held their breath, hearts pounding in unison as the ethereal forms began to close in, encircling them, leaving them with nowhere to hide. In that moment, the whispers returned, and they felt the air pulse with a demand, an undeniable pull. Faced with the looming spectral figures, they each realized that the promise they had made was only the beginning. They were forever changed, forever bound to this land and the stories yet to unfold. And as the night reclaimed the land, the friends stood frozen in dread, knowing that they might never leave this place again. The past was alive, and it had caught them in its tangled web, refusing to let go. The shadows danced closer still, demanding their story be told, weaving them deeper into the fabric of a history they had awoken. What would happen next? The question hung in the air, thick and heavy, as everything faded to black.